3 months ago, Poles elected the Law and Justice Party, led by Jarosław Kaczynski, to a parliamentary majority. Kaczynski's party is anti-Russian, distrustful of Germany, and suspicious of immigrants. And with its strong emphasis on what it calls traditional Polish values, the government clearly wants domestic media organizations to get behind its nationalist message. A few weeks ago, the lower house there passed a law giving the government the power to directly appoint the heads of TVP, Poland's public broadcaster, as well as other state-owned media outlets. Some senior staff at TVP saw the writing on the wall. They did not wait to be pushed. They resigned before the bill became the law. That legislation has also raised concerns further west in Brussels, where European Union officials have threatened to throw the book at Poland for what they see as a turn toward the authoritarian. But as we've seen with Hungary, on matters of media freedom, the EU talks a good game but lacks teeth. Poland's Kaczynski is an admirer of Hungary's Viktor Orban, whose Fidesz party has reshaped that country's media in its own ultra-conservative image. Given that the EU has had little influence on what's happened to the media in Hungary, there's little reason to believe that things will turn out differently in Poland. Our starting point this week is Warsaw. Four voices, four distinct perspectives on the story in Poland. Two journalists in Warsaw, one who opposes the new media legislation, one who supports it. An Italian academic, a specialist on pluralism in European media. And the Hungarian journalist who, when the media law was passed by the new government in Warsaw, saw Hungary the sequel.
The approach of the new Polish government is very similar to the approach of the Hungarian government in terms of public media. In their understanding, public media or state media should make better known what the government wants and argue in favor of all the government decisions.
TVP was a bad public broadcaster, and it needed fresh blood, a reshuffle, new energy, new vitality. It needs to be brought back to life. Obviously, creating national media, you need to hire staff who will fit well in the new structure. Being made redundant is not a purge. It's just people losing jobs. This happens everywhere.
Not like this, it doesn't. The previous government tried to meddle with state-owned media too, attempting to pass a media law, but it was vetoed by the then president, Lech Kaczynski, the late twin brother of Jarosław, the head of the Law and Justice Party now in power. The law the new government has passed terminates with immediate effect the directors of state-owned TVP and gives the Treasury Minister the power to choose their successors.
Widzimy się dziś po raz ostatni.
TVP's best-known news anchor is no longer on the air. Several senior network figures quit before they could be fired, and then the terminations began. And that's just Polish media reform phase 1. A second law is expected in June that would terminate all state media employees, forcing them to reapply to new bosses handpicked by the new government.
These measures are really unproportionate and willing to restrict media pluralism in the country. And of course, the new law that was rumored to be passed in the next future is another attempt of clear the way and reconstruct the public service media in a way that is completely consistent with the government.
What is happening now in state TV reminds me of 1981, the beginning of martial law, when General Jaruzelski cleansed the media. Under this new law, the process will be the opposite. All journalists will be fired, and only the ones who declare loyalty to the new government will be hired back. There are no written criteria journalists will need to fulfill, but it's obvious that they will be ideological in nature, namely ideology which is suitable for the Law and Justice Party.
The Listening Post asked the Polish government to comment for this story but received no response. On January 6th, the day before the new media law took effect, Jarosław Kaczynski met with the Hungarian Prime Minister, Viktor Orban. Hungarians have been protesting against Orban's media policies since 2010, when he created a media council with the power to impose big fines on news outlets, websites, and blogs for the vaguest of offenses. Orbán's council can even block international news outlets from broadcasting into Hungary if it disapproves of the content.
The Polish approach is more, let's say, direct somehow, because with this law, the Polish government tries to reconstruct, to build again public service media that is consistent with this point of view. And the strategy that Hungary used, according again to my perspective, is a little bit more sophisticated.
We will find our own solutions. We don't have to look at Hungary. Criticism of Hungary may be justified in some aspects, but the majority of this criticism was propaganda, coming from the same sources as criticism of what's happening in Poland now. What's happening now in Poland is normal.
The EU criticized the Orbán government but did nothing because it lacked the power. When it comes to the media, the EU has been a demanding gatekeeper but a compliant security guard. It has insisted on high press freedom standards when prospective member states apply for entry, but has tolerated governments like Hungary's eroding those standards once they're in.
It will be really difficult to curb what's happening in Poland due to the fact that EU missed to do this in the case of Hungary, because all these legislations are following the Hungarian example. So the Polish government could just say, look, we are doing whatever Hungary has done, so what's your problem? It's approved by the European Union.
The European Commission argues that things are different now. This past week, it launched a probe into Poland and the media under new powers established in 2014 that theoretically could result in the suspension of Poland's EU voting rights. That would be a first. Politicians within the EU aren't waiting. They've criticized Poland over its media law. Some of them serve in the Merkel government in Germany, whose chancellor was then attacked by some Polish publications depicted as a Nazi out to conquer Poland once again. Those outlets echo the narrative of governments in Warsaw and Budapest, in reviving German and Soviet ghosts of the past, the idea that the EU in Brussels is the new Berlin or the new Moscow.
In Poland, this comes up very often. If you want to scare the public, bring up the Germans and take advantage of the traumatic history of Polish-German relations. Presenting Merkel in the Wehrmacht uniform is a disgraceful act. It's a cynical use of trauma and an awakening of demons. This is purely political. The Law and Justice Party's attitude towards the EU is purely cynical and utilitarian. Give us money and don't expect anything from us. Yes to money, no to values.
These countries have always been under occupation. And when the Polish government is arguing that Berlin or Brussels want to tell Warsaw what to do, it's aimed at the local domestic audiences, and its goal is to gain support in their fight against Brussels, which is very often depicted in Hungary as Moscow. So the old Soviet rule, they want to tell us what to do and we have to fight against. So it goes back to this national sentiment that these are once again oppressors against whom we have to fight.
The difference being that neither Germany in the late 1930s nor the Soviet Union after World War II gave Poland or Hungary a choice. Both countries joined the EU voluntarily in 2004. They applied, and they both met requisite standards on freedom of the press that both have since abandoned in the name, their governments now say, of freedom. On the download now, our viewers weigh in on the state of the media in Poland and the role of the EU in the story.
Since the fall of the communism in Poland, public media and especially public television has always been under a great political pressure. So basically, it's not the way to provide more valuable information and establish new modern framework of public media in Poland. It's just another example of the takeover of public institutions in order to fulfill short-term political aims.
But what is most troubling in this situation is not the media law on its own, but the fact that it comes in a series of laws that aim at controlling the public sphere and the way in which Polish citizens think, such as changes to the Constitutional Tribunal and the new police law, which is being discussed right now, and which would give the police the ability to control all internet activities of citizens.